Beloved of Bethlehem, we're all in the same boat. We're fishing in the same hole, trying to fix the same broke hearts, wishing on the same stars. We're all hoping that hope floats, and we're all in the same boat. I want to begin this morning by sharing a story from a day in my boat. It was a few months back, and I was at that institution of higher learning, the giant supermarket. It's my go-to place for life lessons, and I learned another one that day. You see, it was eerie at the giant. There were no carts neatly lined up. There was no one in red shirts to ask questions. The shelves also seemed to be more out of stock than before. And I made my way to the deli and saw a familiar face, a gentleman who I'd seen many times there before. But this day he was clearly agitated. He was talking to a customer, and I tried not to listen and simply waited. When that customer moved along, he looked at me and roared, "Don't these people realize that we're in a pandemic? There is no olive loaf. I have no idea when we're going to get it either." And I took it in, and I told him I heard him. I said, "I'll take whatever bologna you have open. Salami is fine, even ham. Anything to ease his burden." I wandered off with a pound of Lebanon's finest, and with his words ringing in my ear, "We're in a pandemic. There is no olive loaf. Lord help us." And then I heard a voice, "Bishop." I looked around and I couldn't recognize anybody at first, and I heard Bishop again, and he said, "It's me." He said, "It's Cliff Carr." Oh my God. I reached out a hand, a familiar face. I was not alone. Seeing Cliff brought immediate light and connection. Many of you know Cliff. He's offering interim leadership in Easton now in his 54th year of ordained ministry. I was only 5 years old when Cliff was ordained. Thank you. We chatted a bit, and reassured, I headed off to the ice cream section, and somehow things were steadier. My friends, we're all in the same boat. We're fishing in the same diocese, shopping at the same stores, trying to fix the same broken hearts, including our own. We're wishing on the same stars, the same God. We're all hoping. We're all in the same boat. Today, we gather for our 150th Diocesan Convention. And this moment, 150 years, demands some historical context, because this journey as a diocese has been fluid and dynamic, ever-changing, and also full of surprises, and how folks have adapted over the years. Let me give you some of that history. 2 weeks ago, I gathered with the faithful of St. Gabriel's in Douglasville to celebrate 300 years. Their parish history states that they were founded in 1720 by a group of Swedish Lutherans. The congregation originally met in homes, and then in 1736, a cabin was constructed for worship, built from logs taken from the neighboring woods. St. Gabriel's was one of 8 parishes, including St. Mary's in Reading, that formed the Episcopal Diocese of Pennsylvania. The first convention was held on May 23rd in 1785. And at a special convention on September 14th, 1786, William White was elected our first bishop. Now, I know that that's far more than 150 years, so you're going to have to stay with me. Our history wanders. The Reverend Jonathan Miller, rector of Christ Episcopal Church in Frackville, Pennsylvania. In his History of the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, which was published in 1909, states that through the earnest work of Bishop White and his faithful clergy, the church was extending her borders across the entire state. The history goes on to state that the church in the western part of the diocese had become sufficiently strong by 1864, and not even two bishops, I quote, were able to meet the rapidly increasing demands of the church in Pennsylvania. The only relief left was to divide the great diocese of Pennsylvania into two. Therefore, at the convention of 1865, stay with me, action was taken. The western base of the Allegheny Mountains were divided as the dividing line. All east of the line continued to be the Diocese of Pennsylvania, and all west, the Diocese of Pittsburgh. The first bishop of Pittsburgh served faithfully for 15 years, and then when he died, the second bishop, and I find this fascinating, was elected at the convention of 1881, and he was the Reverend Cortland Whitehead, the rector of the rector of Church of the Nativity in South Bethlehem. The Diocese of Bethlehem continued to grow rapidly, and it was soon felt that a second division of the diocese would aid in the enlarging and strengthening of the work of the church. So at General Convention in Baltimore in October of 1871, there's our date, both houses concurred in giving consent and ratified the formation of a new diocese. At the call of the bishop, the primary convention of the new diocese was held in St. Stephen's, Harrisburg, on Wednesday, November 8th, 1871. This is the 150th convention moment we mark this day. The important matter of naming the new diocese was brought before convention. There were 7 names: Central Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Williamsport, Bethlehem, Eastern Pennsylvania, Litchfield, and Middle Diocese of Pennsylvania, having been proposed. On the 4th ballot, both orders concurred in the name of Central Pennsylvania, to which the bishop gave his consent. Listen to these words from that convention. $41,000 was reported as being raised in cash and pledges at this time for the endowment of the episcopate. But on this amount, which was not sufficient to meet the bishop's salary, which was fixed at $4,500, it was decided to lay an equitable assessment every year upon each parish and mission until such time as the endowment be completed. The next order of business was the election of a bishop, and the Reverend Mark Anthony DeWolf Howe was placed in nomination and elected on the first ballot. That day, members of this convention, clerical and lay, resolved, and I quote, to pledge him in his work for Christ and the church, our loving and zealous cooperation. The beautiful and conveniently appointed Christ Church in Reading was chosen as the See City, and for many years, the bishop resided there. 7 church institutions were founded at this time, including Lehigh University, St. Luke's Hospital, Bishop Thorpe School, an institution for the education of girls in South Bethlehem, and Selwyn Hall, a school for boys in Reading, and also Leonard Hall. The 38 counties of this new diocese were described as the following: a country salubrious, rich in minerals, fertile and wealthy, a country dotted with hamlets and villages, beautiful towns and cities, a country bound together by a perfect network of trolley lines, railroads, telegraphs, and telephone lines. The mineral resources of the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania are practically inexhaustible. Missional zeal and flourishing led to a third division, or reforming into what we now know as the Diocese of Bethlehem. It was 1904 or so when the western part of the diocese was separated to form the Diocese of Harrisburg. And this left the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania solely in the eastern portion of the state and now based in Bethlehem. At the 1909 Diocesan Convention, 1909 Diocesan Convention, a resolution was passed that changed the name to the Diocese of Bethlehem, which took effect on May 26, 1909. At that convention, the first bishop of the Diocese of Bethlehem, Ethelbert Talbot, offered words that I believe still resonate to this moment. He stated, "The only religion that can really do anything for me is the religion that makes me want to do something for you. No parish exists for itself alone, but is supposed to be in warm and loving touch with the work of the diocese and bearing its full share in meeting the responsibilities of the whole diocese. So no diocese exists for itself, but is part of the great Catholic body to which we belong. God has laid upon the Church in America a great responsibility and has given us an opportunity which ought to fire our enthusiasm and stimulate our zeal to the utmost." Beloved of the Diocese of Bethlehem, today we celebrate a common history. Our 150th anniversary is a shared anniversary with our brothers, sisters, our siblings across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. As Bishop Talbot reminded those first members of the Diocese of Bethlehem, we desperately need each other. I know that many of you are saturated. Some of you are overwhelmed, and believe me, I get it. This is all really hard. We have all been kicked and knocked around, but I believe that the song has it right. You can't keep good folk down. As scripture reminds us, we are a remnant people. Stephanie Spellers, the presiding bishop's canon for evangelism, reconciliation, and creation, in a recent book, explains it this way: we've all been cracked open. What if we are indeed at that point where the most faithful act is to accept the cracked reality of the things we loved most? Maybe you were called to be the one to break it open. Perhaps you and your church are the thing being broken, and your life, identity, and understanding of reality are being poured out. All so that God's love might become the true center of your life. If any of that is true, we're going to need some help, and we're going to need each other. Spellers goes on to say that people are longing for communities who help one another to grow into all that they were created to be. Jesus never used the phrase beloved community. He just built one. Jesus purposely gathered insiders and outsiders, scandalous women and illiterate men, hungry children and wealthy benefactors, of all whom had only begun to understand their own brokenness and need. He told them that they were grafted into one vine. And when they tried to make it all about him, he turned their attention to God and to one another. When they obsessed over which of them was the greatest, he knelt and washed their feet. Jesus consistently offered simple, earth-shattering messages like, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." He followed up these words by dying between two criminals, his arms outstretched on the hard wood of the cross, the very picture of love, pain, faithfulness, and solidarity. My friends, the catchy and quirky lyrics of a country song and the fearless wisdom of canon spellers speak to a deep longing in my heart. I hope they might speak to yours as well. We need each other. We need to stay in warm and loving touch with each other. For we know that if the ship keeps rocking, we'll go overboard. We're all in the same boat. I want to conclude my address by offering for you an update on the new Canon Missioner model and our 5 priorities. It is from our common history of interconnectedness and a spirit of partnership that our 5 priorities took form. The missionary zeal and efforts of our forebears is ever present as we look to restructure ourselves and work more closely with those in our regions, our assemblies, and our convocations. So let me explain a bit about the Canon Missioner model. 2 regional canons, one in the northern region and one in the southern region of the Diocese of Bethlehem, will be hired. The objective is to transform leadership and formation opportunities in the Diocese of Bethlehem by shifting the support of the bishop's office into the regions of the diocese with a less centralized leadership. The Canon Missioner will provide pastoral and transition ministry support to the 25 or so congregations in each region, while serving as rector in a parish. Working closely with the 4 convocations and assembly conveners in their region, they will support ministry partnerships across the diocese. Melinda Artman has been hired as the Northern Canon Missioner, and we are partnering with the Northeastern Pennsylvania Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, ELCA, to hire a first call pastor who will assist Reverend Melinda in the Northern region. The position description for the Southern Canon Missioner was posted on September 15th, and we are receiving names now until October 15th. I want to also lift up those congregations who are in search right now. You've been working on your profiles that are to be completed, we hope, by October 15th. This timeline allows for a ministry fair to be held shortly thereafter. This will be an online gathering for congregations in search to share a brief introduction about their congregation to prospective candidates. The details about our ministry fair will be announced shortly. And now let me update the 5 priorities of the diocese. These priorities have already begun to guide us in charting a vision for the next 3 to 5 years. We need your help to further refine these priorities. The first priority is vibrant and stable congregations. We all long for our congregations to thrive. The hard truth is that in order for many of our congregations to be viable in the future, we must envision and forge new partnerships. I now call upon the Reverend Dennis Reed to share a few words about our assembly and convocation efforts.
Thank you, Bishop Kevin, and good morning to each of you here gathered today for this good work of convention. And yes, this spirit of new partnerships and new relationships is alive and well here in the Diocese of Bethlehem. And even though we're still in the beginnings of this official convocation ministry together, we've taken great strides from the earliest moments of our envisioning team through this past June's meetings with our bishop. And so, for my time with you this morning, I'd like to offer a recap of what we've been up to since those June meetings, as well as our hope for where we see this ministry taking us in the future. So, first, what we've been up to since June. Since the summer, each of our convocations assemblies have met. And assembly is the representational leadership body of convocation that meets to do its business. And so far, the business of convocation has been getting to know one another so that we can build new relationships. As we meet on these Zoom calls together, not everybody knows everyone else, myself included. So part of our work is to build those new relationships. And then we also have the joy of remembering and rekindling the ones that have already been. And there are so many congregations in our diocese who have worked together, and it's exciting to sort of share their enthusiasm to help them do so anew. Part of what we're doing in these assembly meetings is planting the seed for new ministry. So each participant is encouraged to share their hopes and dreams for the Episcopal Church, and whether that's on a broad spectrum or a local context. But after that, we also want to hear what's going well and what is challenging in each congregation, so that as these relationships grow deeper, we will find more ways to help one another, new imaginations of what it means to be the church, and new ways for that new ministry to evolve within all of us. A big part, though, of what we are trying to do now is to listen. We want to hear from each person in this diocese if we can. And to help us do that, we've developed a congregational survey that will help us identify trends in ministry, both across the diocese and across convocations, so that we'll begin to recognize more quickly our strengths and our weaknesses and where we might hope to grow together in ministry within our convocations. So that's kind of what we've been up to. Where we're going next has 3 different components. First, we really want to keep hearing your voices and your input and your opinions. So the more people that take our survey, the better, because we want to make sure that we're listening to the hopes you have for where convocation ministry can take us. We've also developed a parish workshop so that if individual vestries would like us to know more about the data that we've received and the responses, they can. That way, they can relay what they want their assembly to know even quicker. Second is the next meeting of assembly. Once we've gathered as much data as we can, assembly from each convocation will meet again, this time to go over the data we've received, but also to start more of a concrete schedule and formation opportunities and ministry opportunities and all kinds of things where each of us can participate in new ministry and time with one another. Finally, we're also shifting this ministry to do something together and put it on the calendar right away. Together with the Diocesan Task Force for Racial Justice and Reconciliation, we've developed a 4-part series called For Our Common Life. Now, For Our Common Life will be a series that engages one of the 5 priorities of the diocese, racial justice, with a direct tie to our convocations and parishes. So we'll hear presentations, we'll engage words of scripture as well as contemporary authors, and then we'll have guided discussion within our convocations for how this work is important to us, not only as Christians, but as an imperative of the gospel to go and do likewise in our communities. So we'll meet in convocations for guided discussion, and by the end of this series, we'll also have an action plan for individuals and congregations to take part in so that the good work of both convocation and racial justice continues. So I am so excited for the work that's already happening and the conversations that are starting in our convocations and our assemblies. I'm also grateful for all of you across our diocese who are helping to make that happen. So again, we hope to hear your voices and your feedback and your input as soon as you can, and we're looking forward to more good work together. Thank you so much for your time, and Bishop Kevin, back to you.
Thank you, Dennis. Again, our first priority is vibrant and stable congregations. Our second priority is racial justice and advocacy for the most vulnerable. Your outreach commitment to bring healing and hope to the most vulnerable during a pandemic has been remarkable. Racial reconciliation has rightfully moved front and center in our nation and beyond. And I thank the Racial Justice and Reconciliation Task Force for their work that you'll be hearing more about soon. Our third priority is lay and clergy formation. Faith formation and lay leadership development are at the heart of our efforts to revitalize our congregations and to bring the gospel to the communities we serve. I'm pleased to announce today that we will gather April 30th, 2022 at Split Rock Resort in Lake Harmony, Pennsylvania for our magnificent formation event, the one that we've been dreaming about now for a couple of years, a gathering of the entire diocese. All will be welcome to participate. Dean Kelly Brown Douglas of EDS at Union will be our keynote speaker at this event. I hope that you saw the profiles from members of the diocese who enrolled in a 2-year Anglican social justice formation program at EDS at Union. Formation for all must be a priority. Our fourth priority is creating new faith communities. Planting and forming new communities of faith is already underway with the partnership that launched a new Latinx congregation at the Cathedral Church of the Nativity. Ministry to youth and young adults, campus ministry, creation care initiatives, and feeding ministries are just a few of the collaborations that are being imagined anew. Let me also put in a plug for the mission resource grants. Over $60,000 remain in available funding. Please go to the website and to seek out the application form for your community to apply for a mission resource grant. And our fifth priority is diocesan partnerships. As I shared when we gathered in June, facilitated dialogue with the Episcopal Diocese of Central Pennsylvania. And by the way, they changed their name from the Diocese of Harrisburg back to Central Pennsylvania in the 70s. So partnerships with the Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, bringing together members of our standing committees and diocesan staffs to build relationships and imagine future partnerships continues. I'm also pleased to share hopeful news from the Diocese of Kajukeji in South Sudan. Deacon Charlie Baribeau and Bishop Emmanuel report that the schools and college have reopened in Kajukeji. This is a fragile yet remarkable moment, one that would not be possible without your continued support. Please continue to hold our brothers and sisters in Kajukeji in your prayers. I hope that you can see how our new structure and the 5 priorities tie together. I believe this vision prepares us for an increasingly hopeful future together in partnership. I want to also thank our diocesan staff for Cindy and Paula, Sandy, Dennis, Melinda, John, and Steve. I thank you for keeping the boat steady as we continue to walk together during this pandemic moment. You do it with creativity and faithfulness. We lift up Paula in a special way this day for her efforts with this convention. And thank you, all of you, for your support of our 5 priorities, your willingness to work within the convocations and assemblies, as we continue to build something we cannot see or know. I am so grateful for your faithfulness. Know of my gratitude for all you do. As I often say, be not afraid. God has prepared us for this moment. Walk in love.